Hey friend, welcome back to the Word with Wit. As we grow in our relationship with God, our faith is often tested. Sometimes it even comes as a leap of faith. Like suddenly we may feel the urge to do something crazy, like leave our job or career, leave a relationship, move to a new city, buy a new house, even start a new business. But how do we know if it's God? Well, in today's video, I am going to be sharing 5 ways that God will confirm His will for you. So the first way that we can know if it's God speaking to us is if it goes against our natural tendencies. A lot of the times when God speaks to us, He will speak to us through our thoughts. And of course, we may write it off thinking that it was just a crazy idea, but if it goes against your natural tendency and requires you to have faith beyond your own means, a lot of times that's how God speaks to us. That's how we will know that it's God. So I'm going to use the story of Gideon to kind of show the ways that God speaks to us throughout the video. But I'm going to tell you Gideon's story first, so as I go along, you can kind of see how everything plays together. So Gideon was an Israelite. He was considered the least, or he considered himself to be the least of least. He considered himself to be weak, and actually when God spoke to him, he was hiding in a wine press, afraid of the Midianites, who were basically taking everything that the Israelites had. So a little backstory: the Israelites had been disobedient to God. They had began to worship idols and false gods, things like that. So God turned away from them and left them in the hands of the Midianites, who pretty much took everything they had, their food, like their grain, their cattle, all of the things. So they were pretty much in starvation mode. So Gideon, like I said, he was in the wine press. So he was trying to prepare some grain hidden from their sight so that they wouldn't come and steal it, because that's pretty much what was happening. Everything that they would harvest, the Midianites would take until they were pretty much bone dry. So anyways, like I said, Gideon was hiding, and an angel of the Lord appeared to him and pretty much was like, hey, I'm going to use you to stand against the Midianites and to defeat them. Now, given the Midianites were very numerous, like it compared them to locusts. So it was a large amount of them, so many that you could not count. So, and this is all in Judges 6 and 7, and I think 8 as well. So if you want to go read the story for yourself, I highly recommend that, because it's very encouraging to see just someone who considered themselves a weakling go through all of this and really seek out God and to overcome. So anyways, so the angel of the Lord comes to Gideon and he tells him, hey, I'm going to use you. And he is persistent. Gideon was like, why would you use me? I'm the least. Like, why would you pick my clan out of all the other clans? Like, why would you pick me? And he was really encouraging him. God was really encouraging him to go and do what he said. And he even told him, like, I'm going to be with you. So a lot of times, whenever God gives us a vision, it's going to be big. It's not going to be something that we can achieve in our own strength. So we have to lean on him for it. If we could do it on our own, then we wouldn't need him, right? So it wouldn't be a leap of faith if we knew that we could do it by ourselves. So with Gideon, he asked for confirmation and all these things. He actually asked for multiple signs. He was like, God, I'm going to put this fleece here, and in the morning, if I wake up and there's dew on the fleece, but the ground is dry, then I'll know it was you. So God did what he said and gave him that sign, and he still didn't believe it. So then Gideon was like, well, okay, one more time, God, try this. Let's try this again. If I wake up tomorrow and the fleece is dry, but the ground is wet all around it, then I'll know it was you. So he woke up and the sign was true. And even still, like, God still had to reassure him. And when he actually believed God, he went and did what God said. He took down the idol first, which is what God called him to do. Then he brought the men together. He had, I believe it was like 30,000 men that were willing to fight. However, God was like, you have too many men. If you go against these people with all these men, y'all will think that you guys did it in your own strength, and you will think you saved yourselves. I need there to be less men, basically. So he told them pretty much like, hey, whoever's afraid, you can go home. So he didn't allow anyone to be afraid to fight. He sent them home, which was like, I think 22,000 men. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't have it right in front of me, but It was like 22,000 men, I believe. So he was left with 10,000 men. And then out of the 10,000 men, God was like, it's still too many. So have them to go down to the stream, and whoever puts their face in the water, send them home. If they put the water in their hand to drink from their hands, you can keep them. So it was only 300 men that drank out of their hands, whereas the rest all put their face in the stream. So he sent all of them home. He was there with 300 men. And I can't even imagine, y'all. Like, we're talking about, you're going against people that you can't even count, a huge army, and you have 300 men, and God is like, yep, that's it, that's all you need. I would be afraid. And then not only that, they did not even have weapons. So they had, I think, like a horn or trumpet and clay jars. And so, of course, I would imagine Gideon was afraid. God even understood his fear. God was like, if you're afraid, go down to near the Midianite camp and listen, and you will be encouraged. So he still sent him encouragement. So Gideon and a friend went down to the Midianite camp, and they heard someone talking about a dream, and they heard the interpretation of the dream, and he was like, oh my gosh, this must mean that the Lord is going to give the Midianite army over to the Israelites, Gideon and his camp. So they got encouraged when they heard that, because they're like, oh, the Midianites even believe that we're going to win, and they are way more numerous than us. So at that point, he went back and got the men like, hey, let's go. And they went down there with their clay jars. They had a specific routine that they were going to do. On Gideon's command, they broke the clay jars, and they held their torches, and they yelled out, and I can't remember exactly what they said, but anyhow, once they did that, the Lord confused the camp. They started fighting against each other. The Midianites were literally killing each other. The ones that didn't kill each other ran, they fled, and then Gideon and the Israelites went after them, and they won. So pretty much Gideon won the war with 300 people and no weapons because of God. So I mean, that's so encouraging. Like I said, you got to go read it, because like, it'll just give you the faith to keep going, to do the impossible, to know that God is with you and that he will bring it through, and that his will is good for us. So like I said, the first way to know is if it goes against your natural tendencies and it seems impossible to do on your own. The second way to know if it's God is if it's persistent. When it's God, he's going to continue to give us this idea, this vision for our future. He will keep showing us. He will continue to remind us. It'll be like everywhere we look. He will just make sure it's on us. It's like we almost don't have a sense of peace until we walk in obedience, until we do what he is calling us to do. And then once we do it, it's like a relief. It's like a huge relief. So in the instance with Gideon, like I said, he did not feel called to this. He did not feel strong enough. He did not feel like he was qualified. But God continued to encourage him. He continued to push him. He continued to let him know that this is his will. So God will keep pushing you, even though you may be afraid, even though it may not, like I said, it may go against your very character. It may go against who you believe you are called to be, but you continue to feel this, you continue to have this vision, you continue to have this idea. It has stayed regardless of time passing. You may have had this idea for years. This may be something that you've seen even as a child. You know, you saw this vision of you doing something as a kid and you kind of forgot about it, and then it comes back around during adulthood and you kind of brush it off, and then another year later it comes back again, and this idea just keeps coming back. And it may not be that long, but whatever time frame it is, God will continue to show you, and as it gets closer to the time for you to walk in it, he will be more persistent as to giving you the signs and just showing you what to do. Another way to know is to ask for a sign. Like Gideon, we can be afraid, we can be unsure, and we can just, I mean, honestly, like for me, y'all know that I left my job or left my career even because I felt led to by God. And during that time, I was afraid. So I was like, show me the way, God. I kept asking for signs, kept praying that God would show me the way. And in time he did. It got to the point where he kind of like pushed me into it. So I didn't have a choice, but he showed me, and he continued to encourage me and give me signs. Like I said before in my other video, I would be watching like TikToks. I would be driving down the street, I would be talking to a friend, and it was just like it just kept coming up. Of course, they weren't saying necessarily you need to quit your job, but it would be signs that would go with what God has shown me already. It would be confirmation for me each time. The next way to know if it's God or not is if it aligns with his character. And the best way to know that is to know his word. So studying your Bible, I know that everyone doesn't like to read their Bible. They may feel like it's boring. They may feel like it's old, it's irrelevant, but there are many stories like this one that can help you and encourage you in whatever you're going through. It is called the living word for a reason, because it can speak still. All these thousands of years later, it still is relevant to the life that we live today. So reading your Bible is going to help you to know who God is and know if things line up with his character. Obviously, God is not going to tell you to go date a man that's married to another woman, because that's not in line with who his character is. He's not going to tell you to commit adultery. He's not going to tell you to lie to keep a job or lie to get a house or any of those things. So knowing who he is, knowing what he expects, knowing his standards, knowing his character is going to help you to know whether what you are doing is going to align with it's his will. Now, of course, the particular vision, it may be hard to know if that's his will, but the actions leading up to that. So for instance, like I told you about my job, whenever it came down to me leaving or staying, it was going to require me to lie to stay at my job. So I knew that that was against his character. So whenever that came up and I knew that I would have to lie, I knew like, okay, this doesn't align with who God is. And I already felt called. So God has already prepared me to leave. So whenever the opportunity came up to stay, all I would have to do is lie. I knew that wasn't God, because that's against his character. And to tie that back into the story of Gideon, whenever we look at who he is in the Bible, he always frees his people. So whenever we call out to him, whenever we cry out to him, he is faithful to rescue us. So knowing that his will is to save us and to make sure that we are in good standing with him, his will is to have us to turn back to him whenever we have gone astray. That is a way to know God wants to rescue. Gideon could have known by knowing that God's intention was to rescue his people. And he did ask, because he was like, why hasn't God rescued us? Whenever the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he was like, if God wanted to free us, why are we going through what we're going through? But previously, a prophet had told the people of Israel that they were being disobedient to God, and that's why they were going through what they were going through. So anyhow, it is his will for us to be free. So whenever we are turning back to him, he wants to set us free. So from the bondage that we got into from being disobedient. So like I said, being honest, knowing the things that you need to do to walk in his will. And also, if your vision is big enough, like God's not going to give you a vision for just you. It may seem like it in the beginning, but usually his vision for you is going to bless you to be a blessing, whether it's through speaking, whether it's through teaching, whether it's through encouraging others in the word, whether it's through financial giving, generosity, all of the things. He's putting you in a situation to be a blessing. So if whatever you're doing can eventually be a blessing for others, then it's likely that's going to be for God. But if it's going to lead you down a path of destruction, it's going to lead you to turn away from others, to be greedy, all those things, it's probably not God. So just praying and asking God for discernment can help you in that as well. Always pray, and go back to God whenever you're not sure. The last way is to seek godly counsel. Of course, in this one, sometimes God doesn't tell everyone and doesn't give everyone the vision that he has given us. But if you do have a friend, and sometimes we also don't have godly counsel in our life. Maybe we're not involved in a church enough where we know enough people to seek advice from them. Maybe we don't have godly friends just yet to give us advice. Maybe we don't have anyone who can be a spiritual mentor for us or a spiritual father to us. However, if we don't, that's okay. We can always go to watch sermons about the topic that we're looking at. We can pray and ask God for discernment, pray and ask God to lead us to the right message. Just letting God know, like, hey God, I want to do whatever you have called me to do. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not disobedient and I continue to walk in your will. Walking in faith means we can't use what we see in the natural world as a determining factor. We must believe in what God has shown us and have faith in His ability to see it to completion. Fear will attempt to keep us from walking in everything that God is calling us to, but we must remember that if we are submitted to God, that He will provide for us. Also, His purpose will always stand. So we need to know that no matter what, we're going to end up walking in His plan for us. However, it can be a much more painful process when we're in disobedience. So when we're trying to go against the will of God and we're trying to do it our way, we walk out from under His protection because we're now walking in our own will, and He hasn't provided protection for us in that situation. So it can be more painful to try to do it our way than it is to go ahead and walk with God. So instead of listening to fear, be sure and ask God for encouragement. Ask God to walk with you. Ask Him to help you to trust Him. He gave Gideon encouragement when Gideon was afraid. He was like, I don't know about this. And He continued to affirm and assure him that He would be with him along the way. That's all I have for you today. I hope this has really encouraged you. If it has, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with a friend who it may also help. As always, thank you so much for watching. I love you, and be blessed, friend.